This is Batshit Crazy, a podcast dedicated to all things strange and unusual, with your spirit guides Heather and Dylan, who will take you to the other side. Subject matter featured on Batshit Crazy may not be suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
This is Batshit Crazy. I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan.
How's it going, Dylan?
Oh, man, I feel so excited about our very first episode of Batshit Crazy.
You may be a listener of our true crime podcast, Mountain Murders, or maybe you're tuning in for the first time. We're excited to bring you a brand new podcast that gives some fresh perspective, debate, and comedy to some of your favorite creepy subjects.
Man, I can't wait to discuss the world of the weird with you.
The world of the weird.
Yes.
It's a sick-sad world out there, Dylan.
It's true.
We're going to talk about Freemasons today. Do you know much about Freemasons?
Well, yeah, in my years of going down various rabbit holes, it seems like the Freemasons always rear their ugly head, and they're intertwined into multiple other conspiracy theories.
Freemasons, I don't know a whole lot about them. One of my good friends was a Freemason. I would always tease him about being a member of the Illuminati, and he would just giggle.
Wait a minute. I didn't know you were connected to the Freemasons.
But I don't know much about them.
Well, you know, it's alleged by some that just a general member might not know their nefarious intent or the actual power structure of the Freemasons. So maybe he was just
get into all of that today.
Maybe he was just a regular one.
All right. Get us started, Dylan.
Yeah, well, one thing I wanted to start with was the death of Mr. William Morgan. So Mr. William Morgan disappeared and was presumed dead in 1826. He threatened to expose Freemason secrets by publishing a book. Morgan was thrown in debtor's jail on trumped-up charges. You know what debtor's jail is?
Explain debtor's jail to me. It's a term I'm familiar with, but it's been a long time since I was in history class.
Yeah, some allege we have various types of that nowadays, but literally, if you owed a debt to someone back in the day, they could put you in jail until that debt was paid. It was like a system to ensure, basically, that your word was good, or you were good on your word.
I've been hiding from student loan debt collectors for years, so you're telling me they could jail me?
You'd be under the jail.
Oh, man.
And so, because he had received the Royal Arch degree at Leroy's Western Star Chapter number 33, having declared under oath that he had previously received the 6 degrees that preceded it. And so, financial backers of his book promised him a quarter of the profits and entered into a $500,000 penal bond, which basically threatens penalty for non-performance. So he's entered into this bond. He's had connections to the Masons, and when he comes back to his hometown, he tries to establish some new chapters. He tries to get buddy-buddy with the existing chapters, and some of the Masons suspect that he hasn't really went through all the process or that he's not a real Mason. So they kind of blackball him. And I guess this pisses him off in a way. And so then he alleges that he has all this information about the secrets of the rituals and the different grips and symbols, and he's going to put a book forth. So $500,000 back then, even if that's adjusted for inflation, is a lot of money.
Still a lot of money today.
Yeah, so it would seem that other people with power and money and connections wanted this book to come to light. But essentially, he's thrown in jail. And then he is whisked away when he's released from jail by unknown people, unknown men, and taken to Niagara County. And
in New York?
Yes.
Okay.
At the falls, and presumed that he was maybe thrown over the falls from a rowboat.
But he just disappears forever?
Just disappeared.
Vanishes.
Disappears forever, never to be seen again.
Wow.
And the reason I open with this story of this one man is it seems pretty interesting that if this is all true, and he was just threatening to expose your secrets of your little society or your brotherhood, it seems like murder is a very far way to go, extreme measure to keep those secrets.
So this story, in essence, could have perpetuated the ideas that there's something more nefarious happening.
Yes, because this was very publicized
with the Freemasons
throughout the nation and in the media of the time, newspapers and things, and everyone was talking about it, wondering what happened to William Morgan.
All right. Thank you for sharing that story, Dylan. I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of Freemasons. Freemasons are the oldest fraternal organization in the world, and no one knows exactly how the Masonic organization was formed, but most people agreed it was likely formed from stonemasons guilds during the Middle Ages. The earliest reference of the Masons comes to us via the Regius poem, which was published in 1390. Some people believe the Masons date back even further, to the construction of King Solomon's temple in Jerusalem.
Wow, so it was actual, that's a very long time ago, and a lot of history connected to the organization.
Definitely. Hiram Abiff is a man with a strong connection to the Freemasons. It starts with his arrival in Jerusalem, where he was appointed as the chief architect and master of works at the construction of Solomon's temple. The temple is almost finished when the builder is assaulted by 3 men who demand to know his master mason secrets. He refuses to tell them of his construction knowledge, so 2 men beat him with a mason's tool. The third assailant delivers the strike that will kill him. After he is missed the next day, Solomon sends men to find him, and they do, buried in a shallow grave with a sprig of acacia on top. The body is exhumed, and he is given a proper burial. The 3 criminals are discovered, brought to justice for the murder. Solomon is sad to inform the other workers that the secrets of the master mason are lost forever.
Oh my gosh.
Forever.
That's a long time.
Solomon comes up with a secret word that is shared only with the other masons.
So it seems like extreme measures to go through to get, like, if you look at it, they're actual stonemasons who build structures. And it seems like extreme measures to go just to get
the trade secrets.
So that makes me wonder what else was tied up in these secrets.
Other stories, mostly told by continental Freemasons, is that the 3 men tried to get paid at a higher wage. Hiram had constructed or set up this pay scale for the workers depending on their skill level. And there were 3 different levels. You had the apprentice, the journeyman, and a master mason. So everyone was given this password, and on payday, depending on your level of skill, you would offer up that password, and that's how you would get paid your proper rate.
Yeah, it sounds like they might have workers coming in and out of an area, so it would be necessary to have this type of a process to make sure people get paid the proper wage.
Right, and so the outsiders couldn't just show up because they had so many workers on these projects.
Yeah,
especially this project,
Solomon's
Temple.
Thousands of people, and a lot of people new into the area, and that'd keep someone from coming in and acting like they're a master when they're really not.
Yeah, to keep criminals and fraudsters at bay. Well, these men kill Hiram after he refuses to give up the password so they can get paid at the higher wage. The secrets are not lost in this story, but Solomon instead makes sure that the secrets are passed down to new master masons as part of a ritual. References to the construction of King Solomon's temple at Jerusalem have been included in the rituals of the Freemasons since its creation. Now, it is said that in operative lodges, the layout of the lodge is often a symbol of either a stone yard or perhaps the temple building at one or another stage of construction.
Yeah, and symbolism is very important to the Masons, and I think a lot of times when you have an organization or a group that's very, very old, it seems like tradition and symbols, they really take it serious. It's it gives them a connection to the past.
The Freemasons have 3 distinct grades of medieval craft: apprentice, journeyman, sometimes called fellow craft, and master mason. Regular Freemasons believe in a supreme being. They do not allow women to participate and usually ban discussions of religion and politics. The Continental Masons have removed some of these restrictions. Once the Masons were rooted in trade secrets, but today the organization's degrees are more philosophical based. During the medieval times, there was a need for temple and cathedral construction throughout Europe. The stonemason lodges began in the 14th century as a way to regulate qualifications or oversee stonemasons. That way, when a big job was happening, unskilled laborers couldn't just show up pretending to be more qualified than they actually were because of these standards that were set. Also, the nomadic stonemasons who were moving from one building job to another could stay at the stonemason lodges in various towns across Europe. When people think of Freemasons, you mentioned this, Dylan, symbols probably come to mind. First, there is the all-seeing eye.
Ooh.
This is supposed to represent God, or the architect of the universe. Then there's the square and compass with the letter G, which some people think the G represents God, while others say it's a more simpler meaning, geometry.
Oh, how could expect? Geometry is very important in building these types of structures. You know what's interesting when you describe the Masons back when they were actual Masons? It seems like they almost have gained power just from their necessity. Like in these areas, you can't have this huge temple or, whatever project. It can't happen without the skill of the Masons. So it seems like they gained power at first out of necessity. They were necessary.
That's a good point, Dylan. The language and symbols used in the fraternity's rituals come from the Middle Ages. In 1717, 4 lodges in London formed the first Grand Lodge of England, and that's when more detailed records started being kept, during this period. The organization spread like wildfire throughout Europe and into the American colonies. In the new country, Freemasonry became very popular. George Washington was a master Mason who later became the first U.S. president. Founding Father Benjamin Franklin served as the head of the fraternity in Pennsylvania. John Hancock, Paul Revere, John Paul Jones, and many others were Freemasons during this time.
Yeah, I guess it's no surprise they brought their beliefs in the different symbols and the ways of the Masons with them, because a lot of our founding fathers and characters who had a hand in crafting the way our country was laid out were Masons.
During the 18th century, a bunch of conspiracy theories have spread. Some are political, religious, and others cultural. In politics, Freemasons are allegedly involved in controlling the U.S. government. Their ultimate goal is to create a new world order.
Ooh.
Some hints point to this and include the Latin phrase that is on the reverse side of the Great Seal of the United States, which has been there since 1782. And I did not take Latin in high school or college, so forgive me. Novus Ordo Seclorum. And on the back of the $1 bill, this message also appears, and it translates to New Order of the Ages.
I bet you said that perfect.
The theory is that Freemasons have a secretive, power, elitist group that pushes a globalist agenda which will rule the world through a totalitarian government. Many famous people are alleged to be part of this cabal that operates through front organizations like the Freemasons. These organizations orchestrate chaos like financial and political crises to push through controversial policies at both national and international levels, all part of a plot for world domination.
So you take a statement like that, well, that's a bold statement that you made about what the Masons may be. And in our day and age, you take an event like 9/11 happened. Very tragic, shocked this country, shocked the world, though bad stuff happens all over the world. But then after 9/11, a lot of things changed. You have the Patriot Act, which took away many individual rights.
Civil liberties.
Many ones that they had tried to erode for years, for decades. And then they just slap it all into this one bill, and things change overnight, basically, for this country. And for the world, really.
Well, a recent example of this is if you look at the January 2021 Washington, D.C. riot, the stampede on our Capitol building. You had all of these fringe groups, QAnon and whatnot, meet up. They're protesting. They're breaking into the building, the Senate building. They're destroying offices. And now, look, we've had a crackdown on social media.
Yeah, you have a crackdown, a censorship running amok by private companies. And it's just, it's like over there again, there's this a shocking change in our country almost overnight. And now it's like free speech doesn't exist anymore.
At least not through a corporate platform.
Yeah, well, these are corporate platforms that have gotten so big, many consider them a utility.
Yeah.
So now this is the public square. These social, instead of people physically in a public square talking to one another, where you should be able to express yourself in pure, freedom and be protected. These are the public squares in some people's eyes, but they're being controlled and censored by private individuals.
This has been embraced by many also on the religious right after the 19th century. John Nelson Darby predicted a tyrannical new world order explaining prophecies of end times. featured in the book of Revelations. He claimed people made deals with the devil to achieve power and fame, only to become pawns in a supernatural chess game. A dystopian world will eventually reveal the unholy trinity: Satan, the Antichrist, and the false prophet.
Oh no.
Many conspiracy theorists have connected the Freemasons to the Knights Templar, and both are associated with their worship of the devil.
You know, all I know about the Knights Templar is they were guarding the Holy Grail in Indiana Jones when I was growing up. So, I mean, if they can do that, who knows what kind of power they have, right?
My first introduction to the Knights Templar, aside from the Indiana Jones film, was the Dan Brown book, The Da Vinci Code.
Oh, yeah, that's another big one.
And that's how I had the introduction and did a little bit of study on the Knights Templar, but I'm by no means an expert. However, we will have a batshit crazy show upcoming on the Knights Templar.
Well, similar to the Masons, their history goes back to almost the beginning of our modern-day civilization.
Other claims are that the Freemasons dabble in the occult. These theories were created during the Taxil hoax, which we'll get to in a moment. People connect the symbology of the Freemasons with that of the occult symbols and see these symbols as, being embedded in things like the national seal, corporate logos, even the layout of Washington, D.C.
Well, yeah, there's no way to, if you look out the layout of Washington from an aerial view, there's no way that happened by accident. That was definitely by design.
Washington, D.C. is laid out like a pentagram.
Yeah.
Some believe Freemasonry is its own religion, as they worship a Masonic god. Others say the 33rd degree of the Scottish Rite is a belief that most Freemasons are unaware of the hidden agenda within the group, or that their involvement in occult rituals is mostly unknown.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess
like regular members.
That can make sense because I've seen shows before where people are talking about being a Mason, going through the process, and it's rather involved, and they're very happy when they get to another degree, and there's, a very, I don't know, the pageantry. They're really into the pageantry and things like that, kind of like the Catholic Church. And, but they just, they put forth that it's about charitable work and self-improvement. That's what all these types of members say it is.
Others believe there is a more centralized body that controls the Grand Lodges, and thus all Freemasons are acting together to worship. There are also theories that the Freemasons are in cahoots with the Illuminati, who also have the goal of a one world order. Multiple authors describe this in books that date back to the 1790s. A lot of publications in France and Scotland push this idea. Hitler believed Freemasons were dominated, or at least controlled, by Jews. He outlawed Freemasons and persecuted anyone involved with the organization. During the Holocaust, he killed Freemasons along with 6 million Jews. Hamas, the Palestinian Islamist movement, says Masonry is a secret society founded as a part of a Zionist plot to control the world.
Yeah, I think we can all agree Hitler was one of the biggest assholes in human history.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, but yeah, that makes sense. Going back just a little bit before that you wouldn't tell every single member your dark, nefarious secrets, because the whole key to controlling a conspiracy or some kind of huge plot like that is limiting the number of people that know about it, because then, someone might give it up. So that really makes when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. If there's some, power structure or internal body that knows the real secrets, but the average member doesn't know that.
Some conspiracy theorists believe Freemasons are responsible for taxes in the United States, and that's also a plot to control the American people and eventually take over the world. Another conspiracy theory is that Black Lives Matter movement was started by Freemasons to create civil unrest. Some prominent murders have been linked to the Freemasons, including that of Jack the Ripper, John F. Kennedy, and Robert Calvi. Others believe reptilians are behind the Freemasons and other secret societies.
Wow, the Freemasons are connected to everything.
They are. That's that all-seeing eye, Dylan.
So with those famous murders, would that be done to terrorize the populace and create discord of a certain type?
Possibly.
I mean, obviously Kennedy, that was huge for this country, huge for that generation, and it really did change the direction of our foreign policy and stuff like that. So, I mean, that'd be easy to make that connection.
Let's talk a moment about Leo Taxil. Taxel was the pen name of Marie Joseph Gabriel Antoine Jogan Pages.
He has a really cool name.
That's a long name. He was a staunch opponent of the Catholic Church, and he would often write scathing stories about the Pope and the Catholic Church in general. At some point, he goes to a Catholic church to confess his sins to a priest. He described being a Freemason, having worshipped Satan, participating in horrible rituals that included murder.
Murder.
Instead of turning him in to the authorities, the priest embraces the man and tells him, "You can be forgiven." He was invited into the Catholic Church. For years, Taxel railed against the Freemasons, even introducing a woman named Diana, claiming she was a high priestess who was involved in Satanic Masonry. His confessions were printed into books and used by the Catholic Church to discredit the Freemasons. However, it was all a prank.
Oh, wow.
I guess it was in 1787. Taxel published a confession entitled 12 Years Under the Banner of the Church, The Prank of Palladism, Miss Diana Vaughn, and the Devil at the Freemasons.
So it was all just essentially disinformation to kind of, deface the Masons or make them look bad?
Well, that was part of it, but really it was more of like getting back at the Catholic Church and making them look like fools. Like, look, you'll believe anything I tell you.
Nice. Damn, that's a pretty long play on that.
Well,
for
the
years.
Catholic Church was very anti-Mason, and they didn't like the idea of secret rituals, so they ran with Taxel stories. There was even a ban by the church on Freemasons. If any Catholics were found being members, they were threatened with excommunication. Free Methodist Church founder B.T. Roberts was also a vocal enemy of the Freemasons, stating that the God worshipped by the Masons was not the Christian God. Christian men who were deterred from joining the Masons and found a loyal place in other organizations like the Knights of Columbus or the Loyal Orange Institution.
Well, yeah, but those organizations had ties to the religions, right?
Yes.
And that's why it was okay to be part of that. And it's very interesting how the church, no matter it's the Catholic Church, a Protestant church, Methodist, they were threatened in some way by the Masons. Yeah, because the Catholic Church has accused the Masons of teaching a naturalistic, deistic religion, which is in conflict with church doctrine. So basically, they're like, well, you have this unknown God that you worship, and we don't agree with that because there's only the one true God. And then the Protestants accuse Masons based on mysticism, occultism, and Satanism. And like you pointed out earlier when we was talking about this, anytime you bring up the word ritual or secret, people will automatically assume that it's a negative thing.
That has a sinister connotation.
Yes, definitely. And then the Mormons, the Masons had problems with them because they accused them of adopting their rituals and regalia, which I found interesting.
So the Mormons borrowed from the Freemasons?
Yes, symbolism and some of the parts of their ritual, which the Mormons were kind of nomadic and they were still developing. Joseph Smith was still developing that religion along the way, and he certainly changed many things to fit whatever narrative at the time would work for him.
There was even an anti-Mason party called the Anti-Masonic Movement, and it was the first third party in the United States. It strongly opposed Freemasonry as a single-party issue, and later aspired to become a major party by expanding its platform to take on other information. After it emerged as a political force in the 1820s, most of the anti-Masonic party members joined the Whig Party in the 1830s, but the party disappeared about 8 years later. So by 1838, it had started to dwindle.
Yeah, but I do believe you could argue they carried that same attitude and energy over to the Whig Party if you look back in American history.
As many Masons were prominent businessmen and politicians, the backlash against the Masons was also a form of elitism.
Well, yeah, I'm sure that sentiment's always been around in some form for thousands of years. I mean, really.
And also, they saw, like many others, that there was a strong fear that it was hostile to Christianity.
Yeah, see, that was always a threat to the church. And I think the church really liked to keep control. And they control the narrative. and control the populace, honestly, especially back in the day.
Now the Freemason organization has developed into a group that seeks personal improvement, study, and social betterment. They are involved in philanthropy. Masons were responsible for spreading the ideals of enlightenment with liberty to individuals, rights of a person to worship as they choose, democratic governments, and public education. The Masons supported the first public schools in the United States. In the 1800s and 1900s, Masons founded orphanages and provided homes for elderly and widows as they recognized there was no safety net in the United States. Today, the Masons donate about $2 million annually to causes like children's hospitals, childhood language disorders. They fund medical research, research for eye diseases, and they provide local community services. At present, nearly 4 million members of the Freemason organization exist worldwide.
Yeah, so what you just described, their charitable work, their philanthropy, they argued that that was the reason they should be left alone, because all the way back in 1799, following the French Revolution, the Unlawful Societies Act banned any meetings or groups that required their member to take an oath or obligation. So that basically would kneecap not only the Masons, but many other organizations. But some of the Grand Masters contacted William Pitt, Prime Minister in Britain, and which you could argue might be the home of the Masons, especially the modern day version, that they were all about charity and just helping people and self-improvement. And so they were actually the only secret society to be to get a pass, to be not held accountable by the Unlawful Societies Act, which was decades later repealed by the Parliament, and then it didn't affect anyone anymore. But they had to turn it. It was all about transparency, I take it, and the secrecy, because they had to turn in a list. Each Grand Lodge had to turn a list into the magistrate yearly of listing members, which I found that interesting.
And that's like a direct violation of people's privacy and individual rights.
Right, and that was we'll give you a pass. We'll let you continue to be as long as you at least give us a list of your members. But they argued their charity work was why they should be left alone. So I guess it's possible that they really are just charitable organization and all that, and they just have this connection to the long ago, and that's what makes people wonder about their true intention.
There is so much information out there about Freemasons, and of course, we could probably do an entire series on the subject. But I thought for the first episode, we could touch on a few things, give you an idea of why, perhaps, the Masons have been targeted and have been the subject of conspiracy theory and speculation for centuries.
So what do you think? Do you think they're really just a brotherhood, an old fraternal organization that does charitable work and is all about self-improvement? Or do you think they're the puppet master pulling all the strings behind the scenes?
Well, Dylan, I definitely am a conspiracy theorist, and I'm not wearing like a tin foil hat or anything like that.
Oh my God, you're exposed right now. You're not protected.
But I do feel like there is some sort of overseeing organization, like the Illuminati.
Yeah, honestly, I think that what you described earlier is that the everyday member thinks it's about one thing, but then there is a group that long ago branched internally and walled itself off, and that was the most powerful and most prominent members get access to this inner group, and that's the ones who actually affect world policy and things like that.
I agree.
Because you take some CEOs placed in like a defense contractor, and you take your connected politicians up to certain levels of government, and advisory boards and things for prime ministers or presidents, or even infiltrate a dictatorship, get into a position of power there that is advising the dictator. You can really cause a lot of chaos.
Or family dynasties, like perhaps the Rothschilds.
Oh my God.
That have been involved in banking for centuries.
Don't get me started on the old moneyed Rothschilds, Vanderbilts, etc.
Well, we will get started on that on another episode of Batshit Crazy.
Oh my God, it's so much fun.
Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you checking us out. You can find us on Twitter, Batshit Crazy Podcast. You can also find us on Instagram.